A few hours later, after meeting in the darkness in an open field, he was one of 150 men who attacked a Myanmar Border Guard Police post armed with swords, homemade explosives and a few handguns. At the end of a short battle, half a dozen men he had grown up with in his village were dead. Accounts from some of those, like Rashid, who took part in attacks by the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, ARSA, on dozens of police posts early on August 25 paint a picture of a ragtag band of hopeless, angry villagers, who were promised AK-47 rifles but ended up fighting with sticks and knives. ARSA, which emerged in 2016, says in press releases and video messages from its leader, Atta Ullah, that it is fighting for the rights of the Rohingya, a stateless Muslim minority that has long complained of persecution in mainly Buddhist Myanmar. Myanmar says ARSA is a ruthless Islamist extremist movement that wants to create an Islamic republic in northern Rakhine. Despite the massive suffering inflicted on their communities in the weeks since the August attacks, most of the fighters now stuck in dirt-poor camps said they were determined to continue their fight, and some refugees voiced support for the insurgency. Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi's spokesman, Zahtae, said ARSA had killed many Muslims who had cooperated with the authorities, and so people have felt threatened and terrorized into supporting it. He added that Myanmar's intelligence showed that religious scholars were prominent in recruiting followers. ARSA denies killing civilians, and did not respond to a request for comment this week. Analysts say the violence could galvanize ARSA members and supporters huddled in the refugee camps and among those Rohingya still in Myanmar, as people feel they have even less to lose. A militancy like this finds fertile ground because of the desperation of the community, said Richard Horsey, a Yangon-based analyst and former UN official. They are willing to take suicidal steps because they don't see any other choice. Transnational Islamist groups could also try to exploit the desperation in the camps to radicalize people, Horsey added. Al-Qaeda last month called for support for the Rohingya. One fighter, 35-year-old Kamal Hussain from a village in Rathong in Myanmar's Rakhine state, said he joined ARSA when a religious teacher stood in his village square in June, during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, and implored a crowd of hundreds to fight. He said, "We have no choice but to attack Myanmar because our brothers and sisters are being killed day by day." "I think everyone joined that day," Hussain said, as he sat under a tarpaulin in a Bangladesh refugee camp. "We should attack again and again. I would go back to fight if I had the chance." A third fighter, his account supported by comments from two elders from his village interviewed separately, said he and about 60 men from Myan Hlut signed up 3 months ago. The 26-year-old, who asked not to be named because he feared arrest by Bangladeshi authorities, said he was among 200 men who attacked another police checkpost in the early hours of August 25. About 40 fighters were killed, he said, but added that he would do it again if called on. "I still support ARSA," he said. "If my leaders call me to go again and fight, I will go back." Bigger groups, administered from overseas, were used to build broader community support for ARSA and the Rohingya cause. Local backing Rohingya anger at Myanmar has long existed, but this is the first serious armed resistance in decades. In the crowded Bangladeshi camps, several refugees voiced support for ARSA. Several refugees said some people had begun to sell cattle, vegetables and rice to raise funds for ARSA. Not everyone was supportive, however. When Kamal Hussain, the fighter, argued that ARSA needed to keep fighting, his neighbors in the camp shouted him down. "We have lost everything. Violence is not the answer," shouted one elderly man, as muddy water spilled into the tent he now calls home. "People who blame this on al-Yaqin need to realize my people had to flee in 1978 and in the 1990s when there was no ARSA," said one of the two village-level commanders, who grew up in Bangladesh after his family fled an earlier outbreak of violence, but returned to Myanmar in the 1990s. "We should continue to attack. Even women can join."